Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery preparing to check in on a couple systems that I had for the longest time referred to as my bins with 60 days difference in their ages. And just a few check-ins ago we decided to give it a much more simpler concept, which is just the odd couple, and the odd couple is specific to just the difference in their ages, 60 days as I mentioned earlier. And that's 2 months, which for a while seemed pretty significant, although more recently we've been really attempting to keep things in sync with each other in these two systems. And they're definitely harmonizing right down to the way we were covering. Up until the last time we checked in here, there was already only cardboard and paper coverings over here in the older system, and then the younger system over here was switched over to just paper and cardboard because there had been plastic on here up until then. Last time we could really see the difference, since the younger bin over here with the white cardboard was still covered with 2 sheets of plastic, allowing for a good bit of moisture to be recirculating, but now over the past 12 days, only this cardboard and newspaper. I don't remember this newspaper having little holes in it like that. I would have to assume that it was either the worms or the helper creatures in the system nibbling away at that stuff. Kind of leaving me to wonder, why didn't they nibble away at this? So here, this is where we were transitioning from a lot of moisture recirculating to whatever it is that recirculates with only the cardboard and paper helping to cover things up here. No visible breakdown of this feeding zone indicator either. But a couple of the things that we top fed last time are sticking to the newspaper covering here. Was some pumpkin that was thrown out here, and well, let's see, there was other stuff here. I got pretty detailed here in my notes. It was pumpkin and cabbage and coffee and worm chow sprinkled out here. Today's feeding: frozen leaves of radish leaves from 2 bunches, I believe this is, or maybe not. Yeah, I don't know. I think it is 2 bunches worth of radish leaves, and more coffee, not surprising, as well as some worm chow. I got a little bit of that left too. So by spreading the food out across the top in both cases, the whole idea there was to allow worms to find this stuff anywhere within the system rather than having it sort of focused in any one given spot. Well, most of my worm feedings and most of my systems just gets thrown down the middle, and then the next time we know where to look to find where the worms are. But lately we've been trying to get these systems, since they're among my older ones, I've been trying to get them kind of geared up for harvest at some point soon. So that's the reason we've been giving them fast composting stuff like pumpkin, and small particle size stuff like the coffee and the worm chow. I'm just wondering if we could possibly do a little bit of something similar to last time, spreading the foods out across the top. But before we do, why don't we just take a quick little till around through the material. I do believe that the tilling around does help a lot with the material drying to the point where you feel like you could possibly run it through a screen and then quickly separate any large chunks of leftover debris or bedding bits or whatever might be floating around in it that wouldn't be classified as castings. But if it's still too clumpy for that, then it probably could just use a little bit more time to air out and breathe and dry. I definitely like the way the paper and cardboard top coverings are helping with the gradual drying of the material in these two systems. I mean, I'm assuming we're going to get a similar result over in the younger bin too. Here in the older bin, we'd already had the benefit of, breathability with cardboard and only paper coverings. So here we've had a little bit of a head start on letting this stuff dry. I think last time too we could tell just from handling the material how much more sticky and damp it was over in the younger bin. I figured we would try to blend in some of this stuff so it's a little bit more submerged, a little bit more in contact with more damp materials that are down low. Presumably they'll be able to more easily break that stuff down for us. But as far as the fresh feeding that they're getting today, the radish leaves, that's going to get spread out across the top again, across the top surface, and shared with the entire bin's occupants. They do seem to be pretty well spread out, doing their job for us, breaking stuff down. And I'm sure that this aeration is going to also aid in the gradual drying of the stuff in here. Let's do a similar quick till up over here in the younger system, see if 12 days of paper only coverings have helped dry things a little bit more. Things seem nice and crumbly. There are a lot of worms hanging out everywhere. There's some big chunks of leftover stuff here, like a piece of corn cob, which I'm just going to leave big like that, you know. At this point, I think it will probably need to be separated from these lovely castings at some point, and I think at this point it's just going to be easier to separate that one large object versus having to hunt down a whole bunch of fragments of it if I were to break it apart. The only thing I'm going to be interested, I think, in breaking apart here is clumped together material, with my main aim by declumping it is to help it dry a little bit, become a little bit closer to being a granular enough substance to be screened. The stuff definitely seems like it could. I mean, if I were to screen it right now, I would be left with certain chunks that just wouldn't break apart and wouldn't pass through. But I bet you there would be a good bit of material that, you know, would flake away and pass through the screen and be a really lovely collection of castings. But I think we'll wait on doing anything like that. Today's just going to register as a everyday feeding. I mean, all my older systems, every system I've got that's older than these, or at least this one here, the older one. No, the older one is over there. But all the systems I've got that are older than the older bin over here are already in the process of being depopulated of worms and the castings being harvested. So that'll be coming soon, very soon. For not only the older bin, but I think they'll both be handled the same way at that point when it comes to trying to harvest the castings. Even though there's 2 months difference in their ages, I think it will be realistic to just continue down the road of, you know, treating these as related bins. I don't know where this leaf came from. Interesting. I guess we can leave it there and we'll see what happens, but it too was right in there amongst all the other frozen stuff. So I'll just spread out the fresh. I like bringing it inboard a little bit because it does seem to me around the edges is where you're going to probably get a little bit more breathability and a little bit drier materials. So down here in the middle, it seems like there's a somewhat better chance at having some worm activity, and the moisture kicking off from this stuff will probably draw some attention of worms too. I wondered if we could possibly get these old pieces of feeding zone indicator right down with some of the foods. So why don't we even sort of layer it down within the foods? Makes me think that that little piece of carbon, that little piece of paper there is probably just going to get gobbled right up. We'll do the same thing over here because we had a similar leftover scrap of coffee filter. I've got coffee filters piling up, and I think we'll just kind of designate this as being the feeding zone because it is a little bit more focused than past surface feedings have been, where I've spread the stuff out a little bit further. And you know what? Let's give them a little bit of my worm chow, and that makes for a really tempting looking meal if you ask me. So here's a couple of these. I guess this one here concerned me as the coffee and it dries, it's going to start flaking out through a little hole over there. Most of the ones that I put aside and are just sitting around have no holes in the bottom. So it is still holding together as possibly a usable filter still, despite being a little bit soiled. But once it opens up like that, I think it's time for it to go. All right, let's get these systems covered up. The Odd Couple bin, doing really well. Both of them. I think a little bit of drying still will be needed, because even though the material in both systems is really starting to get to that point where it's all really nice and loose and crumbly and really beautiful, it does still seem sticky enough and damp enough that I'd like to see it dry a little bit more so that the stuff would more readily crumble. So I've got a few things I got to take care of getting cleaned up, put away. I'm not going to waste time with that. That's boring. Before I go, let me really quickly just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.